Broadcasting from a galaxy not so far away, this is Inalienable Rites, the podcast that will take you on a journey across continents from North America to Africa to the Caribbean and back again. The Steward family will share their stories and all they've learned about life, faith, and the pursuit of medicine.
Hello, our
Thanks
fellow
for joining
aliens. Welcome to the Inalienable Rites podcast, where we tell stories.
I thought you were going to introduce
of
yourself.
Life, faith, and the pursuit of medicine. Oh, and by the way, my name's Justin.
And I'm Alyssa. So we are going to, this is, I guess, would be part 4 or episode 4, but it's also part 4 because we're going to continue that story. We're kind of going to jump right back in where we left off, and if you are watching this on YouTube, you can probably tell because we are in the same outfit.
Well, we're in the same clothes.
Because we're recording them back to back.
But a little side note though, we do actually always wear the same clothes every day because that's just the way we are. But
not quite.
Not quite.
We do have limited wardrobes here though.
But in the attempt to be a little bit organic with the way this thing is flowing, not every episode is going to just have this neat life, faith, and the pursuit of medicine. So.
Yeah. And we're seeing that more as we go along. We're like, oh, how do we... So I'm sorry if you're, I want to say I'm sorry, but if you're watching this and you're like, we just, posted it or whatever, sorry, I guess, for having to work through these kinks with us. Because there's definitely going to be some awkwardness as we get used to this and figure it out and change things.
We're amateurs, That's the reality. But
yeah. So let's jump in.
So, in our last episode, we introduced our arrival to Barbados, how it was beautiful, it was wonderful. It was also a really struggle with bringing the cats in and the cat in, and it was a difficult experience. But then we had this bright spot where we met this great couple, Josh and Heidi. Great. Hope you're out there listening. Congratulations on the new baby. But we kind of left you off with this little part of faith. So we're going life and then faith.
Can I just say, this light makes my forehead really shiny looking. Like my whole face. Anyways.
She's glowing.
Yeah, I'm glowing. We'll go with that.
She's glowing.
Okay,
but
sorry.
Don't worry, it doesn't mean anything.
Jump back in with your face.
So, one thing that I thought was really important was, especially the first semester, we were living in Coverley. It's a small community. It's really cool. Everything's right there. You're connected, but pretty much you're surrounded by everybody from Ross.
Yeah.
So I thought it was really important.
Which is, by the way, if you're listening and you're from Ross, the Ross people are great.
Ross people, yeah, nothing
we
wrong.
We love them.
We do. We've enjoyed the community. But it was actually Heidi and Josh who kind of gave us this advice.
Yeah.
Two things that were really important for them to maintain their sanity while they were in Barbados was that they got a car and they got involved in a church that was outside of Ross.
Right.
And just in case you're wondering about the whole car thing, like you can come to Ross and not need a car because there's a shuttle that will take you to and from campus. And there's a grocery store within walking distance.
Yeah.
And lots
and
of
Starbucks
restaurants.
and everything. So the only thing is that, like, if you're a single student, you probably will find a friend that has a car also, which could be helpful. But obviously, our scenario, there was 5
You do not need a car. But we thought it was important because I was coming with the family.
Yeah.
Being able to
have,
they could have a life.
We needed to escape the house sometimes, for sure. And I think, by the way, now in semester 5, that was both those things, the car and just finding a church outside of Ross and like a life outside of Ross, were great things. It's not that there's anything wrong with Ross or the Ross people. Like I said, they're great. We love them. However, I think it was important for us to actually, it was an important step for us to actually live here, not just to survive these 2 years, not just to get by.
Some people treat it like a camping trip for 2 years.
Right.
I mean, they're living on bare bones. They've got their suitcase of clothes.
I mean, but some of that is true still. Like, I still have very limited clothing.
It's true.
But at the same time, we wanted to be able to
We wanted to embrace the Bayesian life.
Okay, I don't know if I go that far. But we wanted to live here.
We may have embraced it a little bit too much.
We wanted to plant some roots and whatever. So I think that was exactly what we did. And so we did. We found a church that.
So we were looking for a church that would fit us, similar to maybe we had been used to in some level.
Yeah, that's kind of what we were looking for. It was like we want a place that feels like home, that feels like a church we might walk into in the United States.
And also, going back to a previous experience, I knew that my wife would not be happy in an African church, because we did a lot of African churches while we were in Africa.
Again, nothing against African churches, but they can tend to be very long, and there's nothing wrong with really long churches. I'm trying not to offend anyone who might be listening.
Not to be offensive, this is different.
I wanted something where I felt at home, because I felt like that would make me feel at home here, and I also felt like I wanted something that the kids could feel at home too.
Yeah.
Because I thought, like, if we're just all of a sudden dropping them in this new place and dropping them in this church that feels nothing like their home church and feels like super long or super different, like. That's
too much culture shock is not always
going to be a good thing.
And again, my African friends, if you're watching, I love you. I love Zambia. I love Zimbabwe.
Well, some of your Ross friends might be African too.
And some of my Ross friends are from Nigeria. No offense, but it was more for the whole family experience to be I was really wanted this to be a positive experience for everyone.
Yeah.
So we asked a friend. There's a friend back home that I went to school with. And it was funny because our kids actually went to school with her kids. And I found out somewhere along the line that she had actually done a YWAM DTS here in Barbados.
YWAM is Youth with a Mission, for those who aren't familiar.
Like 15 years ago. It was like a mission training thing for a few months. 6 months or 9 months.
Okay, it was probably more like
20 years ago.
Or more.
20 years ago. But we had asked her, like, hey, I know you've been to Barbados. You know any, good churches, like full gospel kind of churches that we could check out? And she actually remembered this little church called the Living Room. So she told us, we looked it up, we found an address, and we were like, we're going to go and we're going to check this out. And week 2 of us being on the island, we tried to find this church.
It did not go well. Their address is not updated, which, by the way, it's still not updated.
Still not updated.
Because the problem is they have an office space at the old church location. They still have an office there, so they still maintain that as their address.
But they don't have the services at that.
Yeah, they don't have the services there. So anyways, I was able to email the pastor's wife, and I think by week 3 we were able to go
by
there.
week 3 we were able to go there. And when we went there, it wasn't an immediate, like, oh, hey, this is definitely the place for us.
It was not immediate.
But what was immediate was they were kind.
Everyone was really friendly.
Friendly, loving. I mean, I'm pretty sure somebody kissed me on the cheek like day one.
The Bayesian
Seems
way.
to be a Bayesian thing. We were greeted by, I'm going to call out Dave and Caroline, first people that we met there. Still, to this day, people that we love, good friend. We had them over for lunch a couple days ago. So
yeah, I like them. Yeah, I think there was definitely that, like, hey, everyone's really friendly, but there was also like, is this what we're looking for? And so we actually spent a couple weeks kind of feeling that way.
Not sure. And there's not a lot of kids. Like, like we are actually probably the youngest group of people there. And
yeah, I mean, there's
a
few people younger than us, but yeah. And so we are the only ones pretty much with kids. There's another couple kids that come sometimes, but so that there was some questions like, is it? And so we just kind of, a few weeks in, we've been there a couple times, and we just were like, we just had to come to the point where we're like, okay, do we want to spend our 2 years church hopping and figuring out where to go?
Looking for the perfect
church.
Or
do we want to just commit to this one and
see what happens?
Make it the perfect church. No. Because we
made it perfect.
No, but like we're like, yeah, let's commit and just plug in and see what happens. And it's been a great experience.
I say we have built.
This is a long-winded way of saying we found the right church for us.
We found the right place, and it was a God thing. We have built lifelong relationships.
Yeah, it's been fantastic.
And they have given us like a really big open door. So most of you know me, but we were missionaries before. We have some experience in the ministry.
Most of you know me. You don't even know who's going to listen.
I mean, everybody knows who I am. Come on now. Don't you? Have you read my book? I mean,
good Lord.
No, but they gave us opportunities like to preach and be involved in ministry.
I think one of the biggest things they've done, just to kind of put it mildly, is they've built us up. they have poured into us encouragement. I think that's been the biggest thing. Always super encouraging, like calling out things in us and naming things that we're gifted in and being like, oh, you're so gifted in that. And things that like maybe we had questioned because they were never really encouraged back home or whatever. And so we'd been like, is this really a gifting I have? Like, is this, I don't know.
And if you feel like, hey, you know what, God's given me something to say, like, they'll say, oh, come up here,
Yeah,
and
they're
they'll
just
give
so
you the
encouraging.
microphone.
Please
and
share
be
with
like,
us if God's
well,
put
are
something in
you
your
sure?
heart.
I mean, you don't know me. Like, because where we come from, it's like, we're very cautious. And caution's not always a bad thing. But this was like opposite of that. But
Yeah.
it's just like real freedom,
But
real
they
open.
just feel like everybody has something to offer in the body of Christ and everyone should be free to share that and stuff. So anyways, long-winded way of saying it's been super fantastic to be there. Excuse me. And
it's built our faith. And
yeah,
we've experienced that refreshing and even a healing time that we...
Yeah, it's been super healing, spiritually healing, honestly, that in some ways that we knew we needed and maybe in a lot of ways that we didn't know we needed until it happened and then we recognized what was happening. So, and we might do some more talk on
I'll
that
say
in another...
none of these things are exhaustive, but...
Yeah, we'll probably talk more on that in another one, but...
But there's also this cool club, and I'm not going to talk about this much now, but again, maybe we'll talk about it another time. But Ross also has a Christian organization, a Christian club called Ross Christian Fellowship, that also has a service on Sunday evenings at 5 p.m. in the stands next to the soccer field. And so we got involved with that too.
Yeah, right off the bat.
So
actually, the first semester, I don't think I went
I mean,
at all.
we didn't, yeah, I mean, we didn't... Like,
Justin went every week, actually.
I didn't jump into it like super big because I wasn't sure like how I was going to do with school and stuff.
Yeah.
But
I
ended up also being a real blessing time we actually have, sometimes we have like between 50 and 75 people who come. These are medical students, mostly medical students who just love Jesus, and they all get together and worship, and that has been really cool too, to watch that and to get to know some of my best friends at school are all part of this. And again, we'll talk more about this later, but I actually happen to be the president of the Ross Christian Fellowship this last semester that I'm at Ross. But so that was life, faith, and now we're going to talk a few more minutes now about the pursuit of
A few
medicine.
more minutes, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we started it again, so this
I
is...
know. No, I know.
Okay.
We didn't.
So...
You mean we didn't start it again?
Yeah, we didn't start it again, but we did. So...
Okay, the pursuit of medicine.
So...
Let's talk about that for a few minutes.
So,
I don't know where you wanted to start with that.
yeah, so...
Sorry, we keep looking down. We do have some brief notes on our phone. Like, this is not scripted, but we kind of had, like, hey, this is what we want to try to keep us on track, but it sometimes doesn't work.
So I thought it would be helpful, especially, I feel like maybe some of our listeners that are going to listen are going to be people who are interested in Ross.
Yeah, either now or in the future.
Interested in being a medical student or whatever, since our tagline is, the pursuit of medicine. So I figured there's pre-meds and people out there who are maybe
might stumble upon this.
Wondering about the Caribbean experience. So I thought I'd just do a little, like, as I go through our story and how it comes chronologically, maybe I'll talk about each semester and what it was like. And so for this episode of Pursuit of Medicine, I'm just going to kind of give you an overview. Ross is basically set up like this. You spend 5 semesters. It's really a trimester. The school does 3 semesters per year. So 5 of those semesters you'll spend on the island in Barbados. So you can start at 3 different times. You can start in September, you could start in January, and you can start in May. So they have a summer semester as well. So I started in September of 2023. And so you spend 5 semesters on the island doing the basic sciences. And then at the end of that, you have to take a comprehensive exam, which is kind of like practice for step 1. And then you have to go home to the United States and you'll take the step 1 exam before you can start the clinical side of medical school. And the clinical rotation side will be another 5 semesters, but that is going to be entirely in the United States. So that's just kind of a brief overview.
Okay. I see you have a lot more notes on this thing, and I'm just like, I'm not sure how much we want to go into that. Do we want to stop there and just talk about, like, hey, this is exactly where we're at? That's literally where we're at right now, right? You're about to take comp. Mm-hmm. So they do have to do practice comps during their time here. Justin's done 2 now. and then they take their comp at the end of the semester. So do we want to just kind of talk about for us
So we got
where we're looking at right now
got
going
about
home?
6 more weeks left here on the island.
And then we can...
And then I'm going to take that comprehensive exam, and I'm going to pass it the first time.
So here's the thing. If you are watching and, like, you maybe know, like, your family or friends or whatever, and you kind of know this process, you know, whatever. I may have explained this to you, Justin may have explained this to you, or we may not have, and you're just curious, or maybe you're not curious, but I'm going to tell you anyway.
We're going to tell you anyway.
So basically for us, what does this look like for us? Because it's a whole different ballgame, in my opinion, for a whole family to be doing this process than it is for one single person to be doing the process. Because if you're a single person and you're coming to school here, clinical is like, you're going to be placed in clinical somewhere. It doesn't totally, I mean, it somewhat matters, but like, you can go anywhere. You can kind of pick up a lot easier. But when you've got a whole family, it's like, it's a whole different thing, right? So we have, I mean, I have probably spent a lot more time stressing about it than I should have.
We've had a lot of anxiety about this.
Because it's hard. It's like, it's completely out of your control. But at the same time, as a parent, you want to try to control something because you need to make a plan. You have to, you can't just kind of willy-nilly go here and there and not have a plan for your kids because they have to be in school and they do not want homeschool. So like, where are we, and you need to be a resident somewhere to register for school.
And the clinical rotations, like you don't get to just pick exactly where you're going to go. We don't know where we're going to be until after I pass that step 1 exam.
We have this really fun kind of intermittent, right? So we leave the island end of May, April 29th is when we're leaving the island. And then he has to get home, take step 1, which could be a month, we don't fully know. And then after that is when they say, okay, tell us where you want to go. And
maybe in early June, I would be sending them a list of my top 5 choices.
Submit your top 5, and then they say, this is where you're going to be.
And they have sites in Chicago, they have in Miami, Florida,
California,
they have some in Maryland, California, Ohio, Michigan, Connecticut, New York City.
So there's a bunch, but we've got this interim, right, where we leave the island before we even find out where he's going to go. Like, at least 6 weeks of not knowing. So that's the thing, is like, where do we go? Plus, I don't know if we didn't mention this. Yeah, we don't have a house back home. I didn't mention this, but not only are we coming back with our 3 children, but we're bringing 2 puppies. We might have mentioned this, and 2 cats.
So we did talk about the puppies.
So we might talk this, So we are bringing 4 animals. So it's not like we can just be like, hey, Mom and Dad, can we stick with you for 6 weeks or 2 months? Like, no, I'm sorry. Nobody wants us to move in with our 4 animals with them. So we kind of had to like, okay, where do we want to end up? That's kind of how we approached it. We would like to get our clinical in Warren, Ohio. That's kind of what we're aiming towards right now. It's the closest to Justin's family as far as driving distance.
It's about 2.5 hours from where I grew up.
So it's not too bad. So that was kind of our thought. Like, that's where we want to end up. So let's plan that way. So we did. We've now reserved an Airbnb for 3 months. So that takes us to the end of July. By that time, we should know, do we actually get clinical there and can find a more permanent space, or do we have to move again? And of course, in the interim, like, I have accepted a job in Ohio. Because guess what? We don't get school funding while we're in that interim period. So if we want to live and feed our children, I have to work.
She's the breadwinner now. I'm sending her to work.
So
she's going to support me now for the next.
Those glamorous, stay-at-home mom, wife days are done, Just kidding. It's not glamorous. But anyways, so it was just like this, all these things that all these balls we were trying to juggle and figure out this process of like, okay, so now I've got this job. Now I've got this Airbnb reserved. And yet, despite all that, we still don't know if we're going to end up there. So at the end of, 2 months, we might find out, oh, just kidding, we will not give you the Warren place.
We do have the peace of God in our lives.
You need to go to Michigan or something.
We're trusting him to guide us.
Yeah, I think we're at the point where we're just like, okay, at this point we've made as much plans as we can, and it's still completely out of our control, so we just have to go with it.
And there is this small little thing too, that we now have a whole house full of stuff here in Barbados.
Yeah.
That now we have to once again
get rid of
sell things and figure out what we're going to bring home, because we came with, was it 9 suitcases?
We came with 10 suitcases.
Came with 10 suitcases, and we're going to try to go back home with no more than that.
Yeah, hopefully less, but we'll see. We'll see how successful I am. So yeah, that's just kind of to give you a glimpse of like where we are currently at, personally, because it's just such a process. It's such a process of just not knowing and just being like, okay, we're just gonna go with it and see.
And we've been
happens.
talking about starting this podcast since before we even got here.
Yeah.
So right now we're talking about like first semester.
We've literally been talking about this podcast for a few years.
We're actually sitting here in fifth semester. So in future episodes we're gonna rewind and talk a little bit about.
Maybe now is a good time just to say, hey, if you are watching this and you're just a curious person or whatever, or maybe you are like a pre-med and you came across this or whatever, and like you have a specific question about something, like please don't hesitate to like communicate with us.
Yeah, we love to tell people what to do and give them advice. Drop
us a DM on Instagram or send us an email in Inalienable Rites podcast at gmail.com. I think our email is on our Instagram. Or leave us a comment or whatever. Like we're happy to hear from you. We're happy
we may
to
address some of them on the podcast.
Yeah. So if you leave us a comment too, and you're like, hey, I'd love to hear about this, then we can be like, okay, let's do an episode about that. So yeah, we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, I think that's a great place to stop.
I think that's a great place to end. So
next time when we come back, we'll talk some more about first semester at Ross and what it's like to be a Caribbean med student and all those things that I know you're just dying to hear about. So. We'll talk about that.
And if you're not dying to hear about it and you're rather dying to hear about something else, let us know. So thank you so much for listening or watching. And
This is the Inalienable Rites podcast, where we talk about stories of life, faith, and the pursuit of medicine. Is that a UFO?
Okay, we're not going to do that every time. I don't think you have to say that at the end. This is the Inalienable Rites podcast.
We don't have to say that at the end. I can say it whenever I want to.
I just don't think we need to say it. We say it at the beginning. We don't say it at the end.
It's true. Just in case you forgot what you're watching.
Thank you for listening to the Inalienable Rites podcast. You can find Justin and Alyssa on Instagram at Inalienable Rites Podcast and email them at inalienableritspodcast@gmail.com with any questions or topics you want them to discuss in the future. See you on the other side of the wormhole.